This is Jimmy Dore dunking on Ro Khanna and Camille Jayapal because the left sucks.
You know how the Democratic Party screwed over the rail workers?
Did they? The Democratic Party screwed over the rail workers. Does Jimmy know how much the rail workers make a year? Does Jimmy know what the deal was actually made? By the way, they're getting a 24% raise over the course of 5 years, I believe it is. That sounds like screwed.
Were rejecting the contract. They didn't have any sick days in their contract. The rail.
So there are no sick days in their contract. There are, I believe, I want to say 3 paid sick days. They wanted 7. And then there are unpaid sick days past a certain point. And then they could be furloughed and get their shift back. But hang on.
You know, the glue that holds our economy together, the railroad, well, the workers, they...
Is it really? I mean, it's definitely important. But, you know, Jimmy thinks truckers are only for blocking roads in Canada.
They get to take sick days, and they get screwed over
They do get to take sick days. They just don't have 7 paid sick days.
pretty hard. And so the Democratic Party intervened to screw over the workers and break their union.
So there's no more union? There's no rail workers union? They broke them. And it was the Democratic Party that intervened to do this. The Republicans were trying to what? Save them?
So that's called fascism. That's actual.
Oh, good. All right. That's called. Wouldn't fascism be taking over the railroads from the corporations? I thought.
Fascism. That's the actual thing.
You don't think they should have to call in 30 days ahead for when they're going to be sick?
So now 70 House and Senate members have sent a letter to President Obama. President Biden. Did you know President Biden?
Is there a difference? I mean, obviously one of them bothers Jimmy more than the other for God knows what reason. Age or blackness. It's pick your poison. But
could give them sick days with the stroke of a pen.
No, he can't. No, he can't. He absolutely cannot.
Because Barack Obama did it for all the other federal employees.
They're not all federal employees. That's why. So you would only be able to give part of them 7 sick days with the federal signage, whereas the rest of the workers would be denied that thing, and it would lessen the chance of everybody getting all of them.
Except rail workers. They had a
No, because rail workers aren't federal workers.
carve out for them.
Because they're not federal workers.
And so they're urging Joe Biden to do it. They're sending a sternly worded letter, Kurt. They're absolutely not going to do anything or use any leverage to hold up any legislation or.
I know.
Who guesses that this motherfucker has it exactly backwards, and that they wanted to pass everything but couldn't pass the 7 sick days in the same bill. So rather than have a strike and lose everything and start back from scratch, they want that in a separate bill. I will see if he reads any more of the article.
Did they have
because it's actually in that fucking article.
Zelensky write it?
So there's a 70 House and Senate members sent a letter to Joe Biden saying, hey, why don't you go ahead and just give them sick days? This is funny. It's all such theater. The lawmakers thanked Biden for that's the way to get it. That's the way to get it. First, I want to say thanks. Great job on screwing over the rail workers.
First, I want to say thank you, sir. May I have another?
Look how they say
we'll see if he mentions the things that Biden negotiated for them and got more than they wanted.
Thank Biden for his role in negotiating an agreement between freight rail carriers and unionized rail workers.
You should scratch the word union because they killed it. They took it over. And the freight rail carriers just say federal government because that's fascism.
He didn't negotiate an agreement.
Yes, they did.
They didn't come to an agreement. Joe Biden imposed fascism and broke their fucking strike and their ability to...
They didn't strike. There's a limitation on whether or not they can strike. They can pause it for 30 days, and then they're allowed to strike. And during that time, they reached a deal, and the union was okay with it. They could have striked after that point, or struck. Striked? I'm going with striked.
Organized. That's what Joe Biden did, and the Democrats. That's what they did.
No, it's not what they did.
Friday, which kind of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. Hold on. Back up. But which could have paralyzed what? Which could have paralyzed supply chains and significantly harmed the national economy. Blah, blah, blah.
They didn't come to an agreement. Joe.
Hold on one second. Let me. Is there a? Let's see. The Hill. Hill. 70 lawmakers. Sick days. For rail workers. Excuse me. This is the article. This is the whole thing. Not little selections of it. More than 70 House and Senate members sent a letter to President Biden on Friday to urge him to do everything he can to guarantee rail workers have 7 days of paid sick leave. The lawmakers thanked Biden for his role in negotiating an agreement between the freight rail carriers and unionized rail workers to avoid a strike that could have happened Friday, which would have paralyzed supply chains and significantly harmed the national economy. They said, while the agreement is much better than the initial proposal that the rail industry put out, it does not include any paid sick days for the workers who have difficult and dangerous jobs and who have, quote, risked their lives during the pandemic to keep our economy moving. The deal, which Congress approved and Biden signed last week because it had to pass as a bill, provides rail workers with a 24% increase in their wages over the course of 5 years. Yeah. And makes it easier for them to miss time for medical appointments, but does not include paid time off for them to recover from an illness or care for a family member. A separate proposal to add 7 paid days of sick leave for workers passed the House, but failed in the Senate. I wonder why. Several Democrats in the Senate voted against the agreement when it came up for a vote because it did not include the provision for paid sick leave, but the Senate did overwhelmingly pass it 80-15. Biden is, and by the way, the only Democrats that voted against it because it didn't include that, and with no guarantee that they will vote for the part that does. Biden has said he supports providing the rail workers with the sick leave, but wanted it to be a separate bill from the agreement to ensure an agreement could pass and a strike could be avoided. They did not have the votes in the Senate to pass it with the 7 days of paid sick leave in there. And we don't have enough Democrats even still to override and by the way, because these aren't federal employees, if these are federal employees, we could do it with 50+1. We could do it with reconciliation, because anywhere the federal government writes a check or gets a check, you can do that way. You can do it with reconciliation. You can't do policy that way. And all it takes is one person voting against it to shut the whole fucking thing down. The Congress member said in the letter that guaranteeing the paid sick leave would cost the rail industry $321 million, which is less than 2% of annual profits. Agreed. It should be done, but you can't force them to do it. They're a private institution. If it was fascism, they could force them to do it. Lawmakers argue Biden should expand on an executive order from President Obama that established paid sick leave for federal contractors, but not including rail workers. They also said because not all rail workers are federal contractors. Some are. And the rail would say, yeah, we can only do that with the people who are doing federal rail stuff. We can't afford to do it for you guys. Do you understand? It would if you did that, 20% of the workers who work on federal stuff on the rails, military transport and all that kind of shit, they would get, whatever, the Army Corps of Engineers, they use rail stuff all the time. That would be about 20% of rail workers. The other 80% would get fucked out of sick leave. They want to pass it as a whole. They were like, let's do it under OSHA. This is the letter. And the letter was here. This is the letter from Bernie Sanders. There it is. And let's see. These are the primary. I don't know where this. I guess the 70 people are just signed on for it. But it's Rashida Tlaib, Jamal Bowman, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Donald Payne, Cory Bush, and Bernie Sanders all primarily signed it. Let's see. A majority of United States Senate and the House of Representatives voted for legislation to guarantee 7 paid sick leave to every worker in America. Tragically, because of the arcane rules of the Senate, this legislation was filibustered by just 42 Republicans and 1 Democrat and did not make a way for your desk for the signature. He doesn't list who the Democrat is because that person wanted it included in the primary thing and blah, blah, blah. More than likely. Or it was Kristen Sinema. It was, and he doesn't call her that anymore. It is literally beyond belief that rail workers are not guaranteed this basic and fundamental human right. Therefore, we urge you and your administration to do everything within your authority to guarantee rail workers the 7 paid sick days that they desperately need through executive action. He can't. He can only do it for a portion of the workers that do federal work.
Joe Biden imposed fascism and broke their fucking strike and their ability to organize. That's what Joe Biden.
The rail workers have a union. They still have a union. They negotiated a better deal than the rail wanted. Again. But please, just tell me how Tucker Carlson would have done it better.
And the Democrats.
Yeah, all of them, to the one.
That.
By the way, is there a reason why he's not pointing out that Bernie wrote the letter? Because he calls him Biden's butt boy?
That's what they did. Friday, which kind of blah, blah, blah. They said while the agreement is much better than the initial proposal that the rail industry put out. Well, of course, because you're talking about the first offer from the rail company. Well, the agreement that it was, by the way, it's not an agreement. They didn't agree to it.
Yeah, they did. They signed off on the deal. Also, it isn't just the initial, and notice, initial proposals that the railroad industry put out. Multiple. Their first times at the table. And then they had that, remember, they did it for a month and they negotiated at the table together. And then the final one was one that both had signed off on. And they're like, we will get everything from this that we can get passed by the Congress.
They keep reporting it.
By the way, 42 Republicans and 1 Democrat, which they're not listing, and they're not listing why. I'm going with Kristen Sinema, voted against it. They filibustered it. Jimmy is not attacking those people at all. If 8 of those fuckers were on board, this wouldn't have even been an article.
Does not include any paid sick days. This is what the legislators are saying. The politicians are saying this. The agreement's much better than the initial. Like you see what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
They're pretending that they had an agreement.
Yeah,
there wasn't an agreement.
At a shady appliance.
No, they signed off on it they literally had to mediate an agreement between the union and the railway countries.
In store, and they make a fake price and lower it.
Yes. So they're.
Do you think he's going to put up the part where Biden negotiated 24% raise over the next 5 years?
They're begging.
I'm going to go with no.
Joe Biden.
And by the way, this is not from the article. Like I put the article up. Whenever I show you guys an article, I put it up there and then I roll through it because I don't preload them. I just find them when they come up in the video. He puts these in Keynote. We've heard him talk about it. He takes pictures of or copies and paste text into Keynote, and then they put it into whatever his switcher is, and somebody else puts them on screen. This is his copy, and then he makes the color highlights. So we'll see if he adds let's see. He's got time. You think he'll put in the 24% over the next 5 years pay raise?
But the initial proposal from the
or how much their base pay is, which I think is somewhere between $140,000 and $160,000 a year.
Industry, it has nothing to do with anything. Their initial proposal. Wow.
What was the initial proposal, Jimmy? You could look it up. You have the article up. You could have gone and looked at what the initial proposals are. I'm sure they're in. You can click through. No.
The agreement Joe Biden imposed on the workers is the agreement that they didn't agree to. So it's not an agreement.
Because they didn't get everything they want. And you don't understand. If you don't get everything you want, that's not an agreement. That's assault. Jimmy is hurt.
It's an imposition. It's fact.
Well, then the railroad companies got an imposition as well. Because they didn't agree to it any more in this analogy than the rail workers did. Nobody agrees on a compromise. The fuck are you talking? And this is why this asshole thinks, this is what informs his view of how governing actually works. If we don't get everything, nobody gets anything. That is the Jimmy Dore and TYT philosophy. And anything never mind that the other side gave in some. If we give in any, we've been taken advantage of. It's very Trumpian. I mean, look at his idea about like European trade or Chinese trade. The trade deficit between us and China was us just buying more cheap Chinese goods or having things made there and shipped here for a lower price and a higher volume, and then adding on payments and adding on premiums and selling them to other people. We made more money off that trade deficit because that's how it works when you're the factory floor of the world.
Fascism.
By the way, Jimmy does not believe that the Uyghurs are being genocided or put in concentration camps, or that the women are being sterilized. He doesn't believe that they're being enslaved while they pick cotton or work at factories through forced labor. He doesn't believe any of it. He also doesn't believe that the Tiananmen Square massacre happened. That was fake. Word's still out on his total belief on the Holocaust. There you go. Now, here you go. Put it up there. There you go. How much? This will be good.
I mean, the disingenuous.
No.
This whole
yes, so disingenuous. Now go to the part where they get a 24% raise.
Premise of this letter. So they send a letter so they can virtue signal to the people they want to vote for them.
Virtue signal? Not a right-wing douchebag term. You don't think they actually give a fuck about the sick days? Well, then who are they virtue signaling to? Other Democrats who apparently don't give a fuck?
And it's just so disingenuous, everything they're saying about it.
Disingenuous. It's the word.
The deal, which Congress approved and Biden signed last week, provides rail workers with a 24% increase in their wages over the course of 5 years.
Yeah, a 5% raise every year. Just under.
Right now, inflation is somewhere. What is inflation at? Was it at 8%, 9%?
Yes, but it's not at 9%, and it's going down, and it's going to go down. But their wages will still stay and keep going up. Again, hold on. I have to look at this real quick. Base pay for rail workers union agreement. Let's see. This is the bargaining status FAQ. This is from December 2022. What is the status of national bargaining? The railroads have concluded agreement with all 12 unions in national handling, representing a total of more than 100,000 employees. 8 unions ratified those agreements. The remaining 4 unions are now covered by agreements that become effective pursuant to HJ Res 100, which was passed by Congress on December 1st and signed into law by Biden on December 2nd. What is the new agreements? All of the new agreements increase wages by 24% during the 5-year period from 2020 to 2024. With, by the way, you'll notice this starts before. It's picking up for lost time when the trains were shut down and nobody was going anywhere. Okay, with a 14.1% increase effective immediately. So all that back wage lift is in effect now. 14.1, they got a 14% raise December 2nd. increase effective immediately. The agreement also includes 1,000 annual lump sum payments, adjustments to healthcare premiums, health benefit enhancements, and an additional personal leave day for all employees. A portion of the wage increases and lump sum payments are retroactive, resulting in more than 11,000 on average in immediate payouts to employees. So employees who, by the way, were furloughed but are kept their jobs largely even during the pandemic, because in case we need to start them up tomorrow, everybody was on the on call essentially. The wage increases in the new agreements are the most substantial in decades, with average rail worker wages reaching about $110,000 per year. This is the average. By the end of the agreement, when healthcare, retirement, and benefits are considered, the value of rail employees' total compensation package, which already ranks among the highest in the nation, would average about $160,000 per year. The agreements also include craft-specific rules for operating craft and maintenance of way employees. What are the adjustments to the healthcare premiums? Commencing in 2023, healthcare premiums will once again be 15% of the carrier's total monthly payment rate, as they were years ago, meaning that the carriers will pay 85% of the healthcare costs accrued by the plan, and employees will pay the remaining 15%. Starting in 2025, when the national agreement is amendable, employee contributions will be capped until new national agreements are reached. What are the work rule changes? In addition to the additional personal leave day for all employees, the operating craft agreements include provisions addressing several scheduling and related matters. To the agreement with the BMWED, which covers track maintenance employees, also adjust travel and away from home expenses reimbursement provisions. What happens next? What's the status of the negotiations of our crew size? These are all specific to that. Yeah, so they have better health care than almost any other workers in the country. They average $160,000 a year for 100,000 employees that work the rails. And that means that the average, that means some are making a lot more. Certainly some are making less, but the bottom of it would be like 80,000 at start. Yeah, they work a lot for that. Absolutely. I'm not, not saying they don't deserve every penny of it. But we're not talking about minimum wage workers. And by the way, do you think over the course of 5 years, it makes it easier for them to miss time for medical appointments, but does not include paid time off for them to recover from an illness or care for a family member? Do you think Jimmy will look back at the fact that this is retroactive and they just got a 14% raise?
Oh, no.
So in 5 years, that won't even...
No. In 2 years, they will have reached 24%. They just got a 14% raise, and then they get quarterly payments of $1,000 cash and more reimbursement for their travel expenses if their job takes them away from home. Yes, and it's a ladder trade. That's right, because you move up in it, which is great.
It will stabilize.
It will still be...
Oh, they're definitely not white collar, but as blue collar jobs go, they're pretty rock solid, and they're long term.
Half of what the inflation was. Anyway, it's easier for them to miss time for medical appointments, but does not include paid time off for them to recover from an illness or care for a family member. They don't get sick paid. They don't get sick days off. A separate proposal to add 7 paid sick days leave for workers passed the House, but failed in the Senate.
Oh, it failed in the Senate. Who stopped it, Jimmy? Who? It's in Bernie's letter.
Biden has said he supports providing the rail workers with sick leave. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't.
Again, why? Why, Jimmy? Why? Because all those years of riding the rails, he just fucking hates those people? Jimmy, who's never been on a fucking train in his life except the subway in New York a couple of times so he could feel street as he went down to a comedy club and tanked?
Doesn't. But he wanted it to be a separate bill from the agreement to make sure they couldn't get their sick leave, because that would make sure that the bill failed.
Right. They wouldn't have gotten any of the other stuff. Yes, the bill would have failed. They didn't have the votes. The only way they'll be able to pass that is that the federal government says that it is so important, and for OSHA rules and the safety of the American passenger, we passed the sick days allotted bill for rail workers, wherein as a subsidy in the tax code for rail companies, the U.S. government pays for the necessary expansion of 7 paid sick days for each employee over the course of the time that they're working, per 16-month period, which you can pass with reconciliation, but in its current form, if it was added to that, it would have gotten filibustered. And by the way, you think maybe he'll bring it up? We'll see.
The Congress member said in the letter that guaranteeing this paid sick leave would cost the rail industry $321 million, which is less than 2% of their annual profits.
Profits. Mm-hmm. What do they do with the profits, Jimmy? Where do they go? Just in some like, you got a monopoly money idea of how the economy works? Where do they just go? Does the railway tycoon with the big open-breasted tuxedo with his collar busted and his bow tie hanging to the side, sucking on a cigar as he goes bald with, some Irish servant blowing him, just smokes it every year? Is that how it works? Or do the profits go partially into maintenance and they go partially into investor dividends so that they can justify? Oh, shit. Hold on one second. Pop back to this thing. There we go.
Not their annual budget, profits. If the rail industry can afford to spend $25.5 million in stock buybacks and dividends to enrich their wealthy shareholders.
By the way, stock buybacks and dividends are not the same thing.
They can afford to treat their workers with the respect and the dignity that they deserve. The lawmakers wrote. Yeah, of course. But you guys just took that right of the workers to get that dignity away.
No, they didn't. They got them everything except the 7 days because 42 Republicans filibustered it.
What railroad companies are these? I'm thinking of investing in.
Are you right?
I got all evil companies you got to invest in.
The lawmakers argued that Biden should expand on an executive order from former President Obama that established paid sick leave for federal contractors.
Why would Obama do that? Did Biden know he was doing that? Wouldn't he have thrown himself? Because he certainly doesn't want the rail union to get paid sick leave. So why wouldn't he have stopped Obama from doing it? Who's a fucking Democrat who hates unions and wants to destroy their right to organize?
But not including rail workers. They also...
Because only part of them are federal employees or federal contractors, and it would deny 80% of them that, but he doesn't give a shit.
Labor Secretary Marty Walsh has the authority to set mandatory occupational safety and health standards for businesses affecting interstate commerce under the Occupational Safe and Health Act.
Right. But that would give them 3 days. And if they did that, how many people think that if the Biden administration went, well, we can't get this through because of the Republicans, so we're going to use OSHA rules to give them 3 days of paid sick leave? Do you think Jimmy would go, well, they did everything they could. They pushed for it. They knew they couldn't get 7, but they could give them 3. Better that than losing it all or passing another bill that might take a little while longer. Anybody? Does anybody think he would actually do that video? Get the fuck out of here.
Yes, they do. And Rokana points it out. With the stroke of a pen, President Biden can grant 7 paid sick days to railroad workers.
No, they can't, Rokana. He does this all the fucking time. Rokana has this really childish view of what executive orders can do. Because, and let me be abundantly clear, if you're a worker, and this is why people have union agreements, and why it's important, is if one president can do it with a stroke of a pen, the next president can undo it with the stroke of a pen. Zero fanfare, fuck you, goodbye. And by the way, the vast majority of the country doesn't interact with the rail the way the East Coast does, which is central to the economic security of the entire East Coast, largely, especially like DC to New York, fuck, all the way up to Toronto in many ways. But the rest of the country, if Trump number 2 or DeSantis went, what the fuck? Why are we paying them sick days? Let the companies do that. If they can't get it from that, then maybe they need to work a little harder. whoop, they won't give a shit. It'll be gone. You want it. It's the same problem we ran into with DACA. Obama, at a certain point, because fuckheads like this were just running interference everywhere they could, Obama ran out of time to be able to get it through the legislative process. They weren't backing him at all. The Republicans were like, nobody's got Obama's back. We can fuck with him all we want. They hate him. They blame him for everything. So Obama had to do DACA as an executive order. And since then, all the DACA kids have been like living on thin ice. Same shit.
Whether through executive order, agency, rulemaking, or other applicable authorities, he must act.
No. Again, if he does it through executive order, the next president can undo it. There is no job security in something that lasts a fucking year and a half. And by the way, do you think this asshole's gonna, like, if Biden did that by an executive order, goes, hey, you better vote for Biden so we can keep those sick days for rail workers? No. He's already running against Biden for next time, and he's going to keep doing it. To the fucking day of the election, and then after, he's going to run on, we're better off if a Republican's in there so they can burn the whole fucking thing down. Agency rulemaking, again, gives them a third of what they need. And do you think there'll be any movement? You think the rail companies will acquiesce or won't sue to upend that if they have to pay for it? If we try to put 7 days later?
Hey, did he vote? I'm sure he voted to screw the railroad workers, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah, see, Ro, you can't tweet to please somebody like Jimmy Dore. It will never work.
Do you think Ro Khanna do it? We'll see. Let's see. They added that in this letter. The letter also said that Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, boy, he's doing a bang up job, isn't he? It's amazing, a guy with absolutely no accomplishments except that he was gay.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you heard that right. Word for word quote from the right-wing channels we watch. The exact same take.
Is now remember how we turned around South Bend, Indiana? This is called identity politics.
Right. Just hiring somebody because they're gay. They don't have qualifications.
Mm-hmm. Why is there a documentary about? I remember, like, first of all,
Pete
who cares
Buttigieg
about
is a
South
nothing.
Bend?
He's done fucking nothing.
Like, who cares that he's from South Bend? And also, why is there?
By the way, does Jimmy know any of the part that Pete Buttigieg played in the negotiation of and the coordination of what the infrastructure bill would be? I mean, this has been the majority of his fucking job since he showed up. Basically pushing to get this. He's one of the reasons why it passed bipartisan. And he went all over the country cataloging, organizing, and putting together a comprehensive list of all the stuff that needs to be done, what you could do in what time frame, the budgetary rollout of it, whether you could do it through grants or direct payment, whether stuff needs to be repaired or rebuilt whole cloth or built anew.
A documentary about him?
There's no reason for any of that, and in the middle of the biggest supply chain crisis in the history of humankind.
Again, you guys remember? I'm forgetting, like, because they all look alike at a certain point. Which right winger we were just watching a video like 3 days ago about this shit, or last week.
He took a month off because him and his husband had a baby.
Which, by the way, look how Jimmy is kind of creeped out at the idea that two men have a baby, for one. Secondly, what the fuck do you give a shit about, like, somebody getting sick days if you don't give a shit about maternal or paternal rights? Isn't this something that workers should get? Isn't that a good thing for federal employees? Nah. Yeah, that is funny, Kurt. It is funny. Two dudes have a baby. That's like, and they're gay and stuff. Wow.
That's the time you choose to have a baby?
Yeah, this is the left, by the way. Jimmy considers himself a leftist.
It's not like you got your husband accidentally pregnant.
Couldn't you use birth control?
Why not use birth control while
Here you go. Yep.
you have this important job?
What is the month off for to get back down to his
Get back down to
pre-baby weight?
his pre-baby weight. Over 115,000.
By the way, both of these men, childless and alone.
Rail workers.
I think Jimmy's like got a long-term girlfriend or something, but we all know he looks straight through her head when she's in his way.
In this country are looking to you to guarantee them the dignity at work they deserve and to ensure that our rail system is safe for its workers so this is all just bullshit. They're just as disgusting as Pete Buttigieg is. These people writing this letter.
So not at all.
You're virtue signaling. Yes, they.
Oh, I see. So he's going with Dallas for Bernie.
They are. Oh, thank God someone called them out. Celeste General Strike Holmes says, you're virtue signaling. You know damn well Biden isn't going
By the way, that person's handle is Dallas for Bernie.
to do anything. He was the who pushed the rejected contract.
He was the who passed reject. He was the one who pushed the rejected contract. Hello. No, he didn't. Again, this is just gibberish.
So what they're saying is he was the guy who pushed the rejected contract. Hello. That was a good line read by the way, on that. Thank you.
Just fucking pitiful.
I like to get a little props. I took Brian Reese. By the way, the Biden plan for strengthening worker organizing, collective bargaining, and unions. This is from their 2020 campaign website. You want to see? I'll highlight it for you. Biden will check the abuse of corporate power over labor and hold corporate executives personally accountable for violations of labor.
My name is a Biden.
My word is a Biden.
Well, show us where he hasn't. Again, if we don't get everything, nobody gets anything. That's the Jimmy Dore TYT way.
Sir, don't you give me sick days. Don't you do it.
She just walked out.
Encourage and incentivize unionization and collective bargaining, and ensure that workers are treated with dignity and receive the pay, benefits, and workplace protections.
Well, maybe that's all they deserve.
Also, ensure that workers can exercise their right to strike without fear of reprisal. Unless, of course, a strike might hurt the economy, in which case Biden pledges to step in and force workers to accept a deal they'd previously rejected.
No, they had 30 days. That's how the law is, because it's a crucial industry, where they could keep them from striking for 30 days and help to negotiate an agreement. If they had rejected the agreement, they could still strike. They didn't. They did not. They chose not to. Jimmy does not know that. Jimmy doesn't care to know that. That would blow Jimmy's tape.
So, fuck off to everybody in government, and especially Joe Biden.
So federal workers, they're in government.
And the Democrats, because they're in power right now, and they're the ones who did this.
I'll tell you, Jimmy, I'm putting all my eggs in this Santos guy. I think he's a scrappy Jew who's going to really scrappy Catholic, practicing Catholic Jew.
Yeah. They do comedy shows. I don't know if you saw the thing at the beginning of the show. It's great. They do. There's a little theater on Tahunga in Studio City that they do. It's I don't know why they stopped working at Flappers. I think it's because their fans tend to tear up the corporate curtains at Flappers.
The practicing Catholic Jew with a mother who died 3 or 4 times.
I think he gets what these people are going through because he lost his mother in the Holocaust.
Yeah. Everybody were doing like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, see the Two Roads? That's the place right there? Yeah. It's not in LA, it's in Studio City. Pub sprigs go crazy. They're all over the back room. Look out. Filling the big spots. By the way, thanks for hanging in there with me. I went long tonight because I missed you guys. And yeah, it's my excuse. All right, I'll see you guys later. I'll be at the regular show tomorrow. I don't have a morning show tomorrow, but I do have one in the afternoon, so I'll see you then. More to cover. And by the way, I know this is very disappointing to the Glenn Becks and the Jimmy Dores and the Rusty Trombones and the Don Juniors of the world. The world isn't coming to an end anytime soon. And there's a certain level of like patience and compassion and humor that you have to look at the bumps in the road with. And that's what Jimmy is. Jimmy's a bump in the road. Ultimately meaningless. It could, if you keep going over it over and over and over again, without learning how to dodge it properly, it'll ruin the undercarriage of your car. But if you it's in the road, you can just go around it, make a little joke in the car as you go, ooh, look out. That pothole's been there for a while. That's how you handle them. That's how you handle all these assholes. They're little bumps in the road. And you got someplace to be. Sometimes there's bumps in the road in between you and your destination. And so you just go around them and you have a little chuckle while it's happening. And more of a road apple. Good point, Jess. But it gets caught in your, in your wheel well and stinks when you get where you're going. The ball joints get sloppy. Yeah, Jimmy does not give a shit about any of these issues. None of it. Like you'll notice that he did not care to learn that the 5-year raise thing was retroactive to 2020. He pretended it started now and goes 5 years and says inflation's erased all the gains from that. Leaves out the $1,000 quarterly payments, the extra medical benefits, that kind of stuff. Because if they didn't get the one thing in the everything bill and they try to get it separately, that's fucking the unions and destroying the workers because fascism and they want to wreck the world. There is no difference between how Jimmy Dore sees the Democrats and Glenn Beck sees gay people or trans people. It is for all of these people that we looked in, Don Jr., all these people, they have horse blinders on, and it's those those shitty cardboard VR goggles you could put on that's just your phone inside of it, and you can look at VR stuff using your phone. That's how they view social media and the news. They can't see anything outside of it. Context will fuck up everything they're talking about. They can't move or incorporate any other thought form into what they're doing. And by the way, the problem with that is that eventually it limits your movement such that you are going to be headed in one direction and you just stay there, which is why Jimmy has become a full-on right-winger. Kurt already is. The fact that Kurt's on the show, that's beyond him being on Tucker and them agreeing on 95% of stuff and 5% is just wrestling. Where you pretend to be against it, just for the sake of the fake fight. But that's what all these guys are about. I'm not. I'll tell you where I am. Even in situations where it might not be the kind of standard line, I try to take my digested and regurgitated idea of whatever concept we're dealing with, whether it be the certain controversies about trans rights or blah, blah, and try to encapsulate it in a way that I think helps the vast majority of people and protects people that it can't help. If you can't solve the problem, you can mitigate the damage the problem causes for others. It's what it means to be a decent person and try your hardest and recognize the worth of everybody. The problem is, again, these guys are selling the end of the world. And at some point, they're going to have to deliver or they're fucked. Maybe they'll just cash out. Honest to God, at this point, they could skate on their investments. And I think that's probably what they're going to do. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Love you. Appreciate you guys being here.